Hello, everyone. This is High Priestess Tana. Thank you for tuning in to Tana Temple Healing Works. Once again, I hope that everyone is having a beautiful day and enjoy the rest of your day as well as have a beautiful weekend. Just in case you don't see me on here tomorrow, which is Saturday or Sunday. So, I just wanted to stop by and drop a little bit of knowledge today. Um, I've been having some stuff on my mind as usual, and I recently did a few readings. But if you would like to check those out, that's fine. But if not, you could check out some of my other videos. Typically, this channel primarily covers tarot readings, but I like to segue and do other stuff as well because there's so much to talk about besides flipping cards all day. I mean, seriously, as you know, with tarot is fluid and pretty much the energy is fluid. You have free will, things can change, everything isn't set in stone, and that's what some people don't understand. But I also like talking about real life issues, and I think I want to do another movie review, but let's see. So, this is what I'm starting to think about, right? I was looking at a lot of the movies that have been released. And I know I've talked about this before with the horror genre. And it is like through the roof. Like I noticed like I never truly I reviewed I believe one horror movie, and that was him with Marlon Wayans, and I forgot I think his name is Tariq Withers, I want to say, the other guy who's the main character in the movie as well. So, yeah, but you know what? I really wanted to talk about a movie that a lot of us have seen, and still it still scares the shit out of us till this day. But I want to talk about it from a spiritual standpoint, and it kind of give me like the heebie jeebies just talking about it because I wasn't going to talk about this today, but I was thinking about talking about the movie Candyman. So I'm just going to go ahead and just start talking about it now. So this movie, I believe, was made in 1992, and I was thinking about the psychological effect that it has on people even until this day, especially people who may have came directly from Cabrini Green projects, and also other people who could come from different projects across the world or across the country. Growing up as a child, especially when I lived in Detroit, people used to talk about this movie a lot. And I'm not going to lie, some of the buildings in Detroit, like apartment buildings and stuff, was kind of creepy. I never lived in an apartment building in Detroit. Luckily, I lived in a two-family flat, but Detroit has like a gothic energy to it already, if you ask me. And if you go to some streets and you look at the houses, it look like a damn ghost town, or like a bomb went off in there, bitch. You know, like the streets have been blown up to smithereens, with one house spaced out here, one house spaced out there, and it used to scare the shit out of me. And I'm thinking about, even like, I had an alley like in the back part of my house, and it was kind of spooky because the neighborhood I came from, it was, it was kind of rough over there. I'm not gonna lie, it was rough, y'all. So I was glad when I finally moved the hell away from there. But child, I could say this movie resonates with a whole lot of people. So there was a real life story about, I believe she was an elderly woman who may have lived by herself, and they said that she was attacked through her mirror that was in her bathroom because, from my understanding, and this was real, it was like a real life Candyman type of deal, type of story going on, right? So somebody had killed her by reaching through the back of her medicine cabinet, and bust through her mirror or something like that, or remove the mirror, and they killed, like, it's crazy, and they unalived her, I'm gonna say that, or they killed her, you know. And it's real, it's a real story. I forgot her name, and I actually want to, I just, ooh, the energy around this is so creepy. But it's a real life story, y'all, when it comes to that. And that happened in Cabrini Green. Now, this story, this is fictional, and I believe it was based on a book or a short story. And from my understanding, let's see, I want to look up something here. So yeah, it was, this movie was made in 1992, but that story about the lady I mentioned, that was real. Um, this movie stars Virginia Madsen, Tony Todd, um, Xander Berkeley, and Casey Lemons. I want to say Cassie or Casey Lemons. She's married to another black actor too. I think his name is Vondi. Yeah, Vondi Curtis Hall. Okay, he's been in a lot of stuff too. If you're a movie buff like me, you will know who I'm talking about. And yes, this was based on a story by Clive Barker. It was a short story called The Forbidden. So basically, we're in a movie, we're going to meet a character named Helen. Okay? So Helen Lyle is an anthropology graduate student, and she was attending the University of Illinois Chicago, and she was doing this research about urban legends, and she started familiarizing herself or learning more about the urban legend himself called Candyman, right? So it's a spirit that goes around killing people in the projects, from what they were understanding. And if you say his name 5 times in the mirror, you summon him, and he'll basically kill you. He'll unalive you. You know, he had a very vengeful spirit, and he he basically was coming back without no mercy because of what happened to him. I'm going to delve into that later. So Helen has a friend named Bernadette, and they're working on a thesis on how the Cabrini Green residents, use the legend of Candyman to cope with them having racial inequality, a lack of resources, being impoverished, and basically dealing with things such as like violence, especially like gang violence and killings that occur around the Cabrini Green projects at the time. And they end up interviewing the victim's neighbor, the woman who basically got killed. And it's crazy because they put that lady's story pretty much in the movie, like the real life shit that happened. A lot of people don't realize it was a real story about the lady, how the way she got killed and stuff. But they incorporated that in this movie, which happens to be a fictional movie. Okay, I just wanted to emphasize that. So they go around, basically trying to connect with the locals of the projects, which is Cabrini Green housing projects. And they end up talking to, interviewing the lady who got unalived, in the movie, because they were talking about this at the beginning of the movie. This lady got unalived, and she basically got killed with a hook and all this other stuff. And the name of the neighbor is Anne Marie McCoy, and she's a single mother raising her son Anthony. And we're going to learn more about Anthony later too, because he ended up being a victim of this myth, also known as Candyman, right? So we kind of find out that the main character, well, the main character, played by Tony Todd, Candyman, was an African American man. He was born in the late 1800s, and he was the son of a slave who grew up, and he became a renowned painter, and he ended up falling in love with a white woman. And From my understanding, I believe that was the man's daughter who he was painting a portrait for. He ended up impregnating her, fell in love with her, and then the lynch mob was sent to kill him, basically. And they sawed off his right hand and they smeared it with a honeycomb, and the bees they let off some bees so they could sting him to death pretty much, and he was burned basically to death, and it was just horrible, y'all. And they said the name, that I'm tired of saying the name, but it is what it is, 5 times in the mirror, and that's how his spirit got trapped pretty much on the other side, if you will, the spiritual world. And basically, Helen went through a lot of stuff trying to basically find out about this myth. So, come to find out, when she went there, she had got beat up or hit by this other dude who was the fake version of the Candyman. He basically beat her up, with the hook or whatever. He hit her, I think, a couple of times, and he was in a lineup because she did a police report, and it was crazy. And y'all, the man who's playing the fake version of Candyman, y'all remember What's Love Got to Do with It? The dude that played Spider, that was him, y'all. I'm telling you, this movie, you see some folks be like, damn, that sure was them. So it was crazy. Let me tell you something. Tony Todd killed this role. The thing about Tony Todd, and it's crazy, God rest his soul, because he's no longer here with us. I was devastated when I found out about him passing away. I was like, oh my God, like, wow, he went down as a legend, right? Especially when it came to this genre, like with horror movies and science, like some science fiction stuff too, I believe. But from what I understand, and he did theater too, which he really loved doing, by the way. He was a very magnificent actor, to be honest. He had the voice. He was well spoken. He had the height. He was tall as hell, and he was very elegant. I'm gonna tell you, the character of Candyman was one of the most elegant people I like, far as speaking and constructing sentences and everything with his demeanor, like a poet, right? He was given like Shakespeare almost. And I was like, wow, like how the way he carried himself and everything, even though he was a slasher, he'll reel you in because he had that voice and the height and everything. And knowing that he was a black man too, it was different, right? Because you didn't see a lot of black slashers, in horror movies and stuff. So, girl, this the thing. So, throughout the movie, he basically was getting into Helen's head. He would have her in a daze. Because when she first saw him, she looking like, oh my God, who was this big black man? Like, and she was like hypnotized. And he was hypnotized because of his voice and stuff. And I was like, wow. But it's so crazy because I know I'm going off the tangent, but with Tony Todd's energy, y'all, he kind of remind me of like he could have came from a certain African tribe, like in West Africa or something. I don't know why he was giving me like kind of like Fulani vibes a little bit. Like he looked like he was mixed with like Ghanaian, Fulani, a few things. Or maybe even Wolof or something. I don't know. Or from Guinea or something like that. He did look like he could come from Guinea or it mixed with like other stuff, you know what I'm saying? Like other tribes. But anyway, he was a phenomenal actor and he killed this role. No pun intended, because he was in the movie, his character was killing a whole lot of damn people. But I missed something very important, y'all, at the beginning. You already know it was two individuals who had to play Curious George and they summoned him and he basically killed the boyfriend. snatched his ass up or hooked his ass through the damn mirror. I said, "Oh boy, here we go with this dumb shit." And I was like, "Oh, when you play stupid games, you win stupid prizes, right?" I forgot to mention that. It started off with that type of entertainment, those jump scares and stuff. But as time progressed and we look at Helen and she's taking pictures and stuff in the projects and her goofy ass, I'm looking like, don't you think that you eventually, when you keep calling or summoning or wondering, you're giving him energy? But it was like he was in love with Helen because she looked like his ex, or not ex, but his lover, and the woman who he had impregnated. And from my understanding, I can't remember if they had been in a relationship for a while, him and his actual lover that he had, because she looks so much like Helen. And we're going to find that out, but that's not until part two where we find out. And but that's the reason why I'm jumping ahead here, why he was so infatuated with her, because she looked so much like his lover, who he had a relationship with and had a child with. That was his child's mother as well. She was his child's mother as well, rather. Damn, I said that kind of fucked up. But anyway, and so as they going throughout the projects, I'm just skipping around. I'm not really trying to give a full on recap. They found a boy who was disabled. He was mentally disabled or developmentally disabled, and she found out, rather, through Jake, who was also a local Cabrini Green resident. He was a young guy, young child. He wasn't a guy, he was a child. Um, who basically was telling the story about how Candyman had castrated this young man, this disabled young man, in a public bathroom. And that's when she basically encountered a man who I mentioned before, dude that played Spider and What's Love Got to Do with It. He was one of the band members. He basically hit her, and he was the head of a local gang, right? And they were basically trying to charge him for the murders that derived from this Candyman figure, right? So, um, that's when the hypnotizing started. When she would go to she went to the parking garage, and a few days later, she see this tall black man, and he had some nice shoes on, from what I remember. Because also, from my understanding, I thought he was a shoemaker too, or something like that. Or his father was the owner of a shoe company. But I think that was in part two. I'm jumping ahead anyway. Any old way. He was dressed nice from what we could see on the outside, but little do you know, he had a torso that was eaten up. His flesh had been eaten up, because you got to think, he was attacked by bees and he was set on fire. Okay, so I also want to jump back to talking about the neighbor that they interviewed, because she's a very important figure too, played by Vanessa. I want to say, is it Vanessa A. Williams? And I know it was a thing with, if y'all know what I'm talking about, with Vanessa L. Williams versus Vanessa A. Williams. Because they look like, oh hell no, you're not about to just say Vanessa Williams, bitch. You gonna say either Vanessa A. or Vanessa L. Williams, okay? So, Anne Marie McCoy, who's the single mother of the infant Anthony, she she basically knew about she knew some weird activity going on, and she was the neighbor of the lady who had got unalived, who they were talking about at the very beginning of the movie. Now, how they found out the backstory about this Candyman myth or the legend or however you want to put it was when Helen and her husband Trevor, who we're going to find out about him later, he was full of shit. Alongside Bernadette, had dinner with this professor named Professor Philip Purcell, and he was an expert on the myth of, Candyman or whatever. And basically, he was telling them the background. Like I said, he was a slave turned renowned painter. Okay, so it's like she was in the days then, thinking like, you know, you can see, and from what I'm understanding, she was under actual hypnosis for real. And I know Tony Todd had real bees in his mouth, but they took off the stingers and they said if he got stung by a bee, just so happened if he did get stung and it was a mishap where they didn't get a stinger off of any one of those bees, he got $1,000 per sting, from my understanding, or something like that. It was something like that. Okay, he was definitely compensated if he got stung. Okay, so basically, long story kept short, Candyman basically manipulated Helen. Like he had her in a daze. And all of a sudden, some weird stuff started happening to Helen. She woke up in the house of Anne Marie McCoy, Anthony's mother, and they thought that she had did something to the infant child. Like she took the child. The mom, Anne Marie McCoy, was losing her fucking mind because she's looking like, this bitch killed my baby or some shit like that. And she went off like she was like, oh my God, she had like a cleaver, a meat cleaver or something. That's what Helen had in her hand. And they locked her ass up in the psych ward and it went down. Okay. And come to find out, she didn't do that shit. Candyman staged it to make Helen look like she was the monster. Also, you would also notice that beforehand, her friend had got killed too. Bernadette got killed when she visited their home or something like that. I believe that happened first, where he jugged her through the mirror, and I was like, "Ooh," because I think she was saying his name, and she said it 5 times, and he killed her, he unalived her ass, and I'm like, "Whoa," and it was crazy. So basically, people started to second guess and think, is this woman Helen behind the murders? Is she one, or is she a copycat killer, or whatever, right? So after um after so long, also she was framed for killing her husband too. But that didn't happen either. She didn't do that either. That was actually Candyman's doing as well. Helen was accused of, harming her husband. So check this out. What I'm also thinking, oh my God, it was something that was coming to mind. Okay. That may have been a little out of order as I'm thinking about it. Um, how I said it. From my understanding, that happened first with the situation with Helen waking up at Anne Marie's apartment. She was covered in blood, and the Wattweiler that was there, and from my understanding, the Rottweiler had been decapitated, and the son Anthony was missing, right? So that happened first, okay? But then come to find out, hold up, I was right. I think that was true with her friend Bernadette. Oh no, that's right. That's right. That's the right order. Did okay, so what happened was the police came and they arrested Helen, right? I had it backwards. They after the situation with Anne Marie and the dog and the missing son, and Anne Marie tried to attack Helen, but Helen ended up stabbing her out of self defense with the struggle. They was going back and forth trying to fight each other, you know. Police came, they arrested Helen, and then Trevor, Helen's husband, bailed her out of jail. And then Helen saw Candyman in a photo she took at Cabrini Green, right? And he broke into the apartment and cut her neck and she passed out. But then when Bernadette came to Helen's apartment, she realized that Candyman had murdered Bernadette. So that's what happened. I forgot. I had it backwards, right? Where I was thinking too when Bernadette did summon him, but it wasn't during that time. I got it mixed up. She summoned him a different time. I think one time was it at Helen's apartment before or something like that. But anyway, y'all. So basically, once Helen got committed to the psychiatric hospital, um, she was being interviewed for her trial that she had coming up, and she tried to prove her innocence by summoning Candyman, and come to find out he appeared and he killed the psychiatrist too. And he then freed Helen from the restraints and she ended up escaping, and she came home to her apartment and found out that her husband was living with one of his students, Stacy, and he was having an affair with her basically. um it is crazy because that's basically what he was trying to do. He was having an affair with that young lady, and she kind of reminded us of a younger version of Helen because I believe that's how she met him when she was a student in his class or something. But it's crazy. But anyway, from what I was understanding too, from what I get was, oh my God. Remember I was talking about the baby Anthony? Come to find out, girl, Candyman had Anthony the whole damn time, y'all. And he made it seem like he was, like he had no idea at first, but really he was a monster. He showed Helen basically that he was like immortal in a sense. Like um he asked her to surrender herself to him and he would let Anthony free because Anthony was in his care or lack thereof, and what was in his presence. And he showed her once he opened his coat that he was just a rib cage, and it was just filled with bees. It was so nasty, y'all. He had bees start coming out his mouth and her throat, and as he was trying to kiss her, as he was kissing her and stuff. And then he left with Anthony, and next thing you know, Helen woke up and saw a mural of her and Candyman. Oh my God. And she was portrayed as his lover. And sorry. She woke up and saw a mural of Candyman and his lover, and that's when we found out that she looked just like his lover. She had a striking resemblance. Like she was very much, she looked so much like her, y'all. It was crazy. And I'm thinking, was she a reincarnation of her? I forgot his lover's name, but come to find out, the residents um was all around, standing all around, and and they were trying to burn that, what they call it, a pyre or pier, whatever, pyre, pyre, of like a, it's like a triangle shape, and it's like a bunch of sticks and other stuff or trash and stuff that they're going to set on fire. And they didn't know that they didn't know that Helen and baby Anthony was also inside of that mound of junk and whatever. Come to find out, it wasn't just him that they didn't know that they were accidentally possibly going to hurt all three of them, and they just really wanted him. So they come to find out that Helen was never the problem. It was Candyman who was the murderer and all this other stuff, the manipulator. And it's crazy because Helen ended up dying because she ended up saving baby Anthony. It was sad. Her hair was burned off and stuff. And then come to find out that everyone from the neighborhood who was down with Jake and Anne Marie end up paying their respects at Helen's funeral, because unfortunately she passed away from her burns and stuff, and she didn't make it. And then next thing you know, you have Trevor, who's struck with grief, and he felt guilty because he basically betrayed his wife, and he said her name, he said Helen's name 5 times in the mirror, and you already know what happened. Her spirit came back vengeful, and she killed his ass by using Candyman's hook. Stacy was hysterical and screaming and shit like, oh my gosh, she found his body in a bathtub. And next thing you know, you see a new mural of Helen dressed in white with her hair, you know, basically burned. You could tell that her scalp had been burned, and she appeared in Candyman's lair or whatever. So basically, you know what? I got some thoughts about this. Um, I liked how they incorporated talking about an interracial romance, slavery, trauma, and everything in one movie, right? And racial injustice, and that was cool. Um, and it shows that there were that this myth or this entity wasn't just one person that could have been like this. It was like multiple versions of this entity that became this entity in a sense, because you have the real Candyman and you have copycats. And some people was using an urban legend as a way for them to gain power while living in, I would say, a disenfranchised or highly impoverished, a high crime environment. So in a way, they were idolizing this energy, but they also feared the energy too. So that was crazy to me. And also, I want to point out something very important. The guy, not the guy, shit, the his last name is Guy, y'all. His name is Dewan Guy. He played Jake. That's why I keep saying that. I'm like, he is the one in Baby Boy, the movie Baby Boy with Tyrese, the one who was the gang member who was trying to be all hard and stuff. He beat his ass. He said, "Oh, basically like you a real one, huh? You a real G." He started beating him with that belt and stuff. That's him. That's him, y'all. Um, he had grown up then, obviously in Baby Boy. Um, but This movie covers layers of different things happening at once. It wasn't just really about, oh, we got this big scary black man with a hook and he got bees coming out his rib cage, which happened to be just flesh and bone or whatever. Or, yeah, it's crazy. This was talking about racism, trauma, being in poverty, lack of how would I say it? Like not being acknowledged in society pretty much. Pretty much being overlooked because of their race, because of their environment that they came from. And it was deeper than just the backstory of this myth, this mythological character. Okay. So we saw in the newest version of Candyman, which is in was in 2021, I believe, that he became like a crusade for justice versus in this version of it, Candyman mostly killed black people, and I'm assuming because that's who he was around mostly, maybe the spirit had settled there in that part of town, and that's all who he could torment basically was mostly black residents. And then again, it was given like maybe he became fucked up like some of them. It was black on black crime because that's what the spirit started being around, mostly his own kind, and it became like what they would call black on black crime. And he was a product of his environment too. That's something to think about. But also with the interracial love aspect, you didn't see a whole lot of movies talking about this to this extremity. Like, from my understanding, especially also from what I looked at, he was very narcissistic and controlling and manipulative towards Helen because it's like if you don't do what I tell you to do, if you don't fall for me, I'm gonna make your life live in hell. I'm gonna have people thinking you're crazy, you're a killer, you're a menace to society, and that's that. So y'all, this was deep. Let me know y'all comments. I try not to be too scary, but it's something to think about, y'all. Anyway, I hope y'all have a beautiful rest of y'all day. This is High Priestess Tana. Peace. Signing off. And yeah, let me know what y'all think.